Great, and I am Tom Swip, owner and founder of Swip Systems. We're an information technology company, so we're an app builder. So for the last 20 years we've been building every kind of app you can imagine, from Windows apps to web apps to mobile apps, apps you find running on little devices in plant floor facilities. If there's an app out there like it, we've probably built one of them over time. And today we're here to talk about how to make mobile apps a reality. So as you all know, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of different mobile app ideas and not really sure how to get started with them. You know, some of them start with that burst of inspiration, and you know, they stop at that point in time. And these are just kind of some helpful techniques and tips that we follow in our own practice, and we help our customers follow just to make it through the process and get down to the end game. So we'll just kind of go ahead and get started here, and I'm just going to kind of walk you through the process itself. So as most mobile apps are, there's a glimpse of inspiration, and like I said, a lot of apps stop at this point in the process. You know, 99% of them, you know, never come to fruition. People say, oh, I like this, you know, somebody should build an app for that. But a lot of them actually do come to fruition. So there's that glimpse of inspiration. You might be sitting at work. What we've noticed is that this is it's got a lot to do with the niche that you're familiar with and the niche that you're in. So, you know, depending on what industry you're in, you see a need, fill a need. I'm sure you've heard that saying before. So it all starts with that glimpse of inspiration. And from there, most people realize, I don't know anything about building a mobile app. So that's the biggest challenge that most people run into, is they don't know how to get started. So that's what we're going to kind of walk through today, is the steps that it would take to get through the process of actually building that app. So one of the first things that we recommend people start with is wireframing. Wireframing is essentially, if I were to draw up on this whiteboard with a whiteboard marker, but do that on the web, it's a way of collaboratively creating mock-ups of different mobile applications, different screen layouts, different iterations of development, so that you can quickly and efficiently flesh out the technology that you're looking at. There are a lot of different ones out there. One that we like out there is called Balsamic. It's kind of a little whimsical wireframing tool. It literally looks like you drew it up here on the whiteboard, but you can do it on screen. You can do it through collaboration. It's all browser based, and the moment I make a change, in a couple of seconds later it will actually refresh on your end, and you can actually collaborate on that even in a virtual environment. So first thing to do would be to wireframe it. This really helps you flesh out the app to the point where you can see all the different screens that would be involved, where the different buttons would be placed, where the different drop downs would be placed, where grids would be placed, where links out to other websites maybe would be placed. Video, everything, there's all these components that you can quickly drag onto your platform or onto your canvas, and then move them around and shuffle them around to get to the point where you have a good UI, user interface, or UX, user experience, that flows very nicely through the screens and helps your user work their way through the process. So after wireframing, then we recommend going for a minimum viable product. So not most valuable player in this case, but minimum viable product, illustrated by that graph up there. Most people would have a tendency to try to fill the whole graph. So what they're going to want to do is build every single feature that would be out there, because they want the customer to come in, take a look at it, and think, wow, this is really super cool. But what that leads to is called scope creep. And the problem with scope creep is it'll kill a project. So those of you that have been involved in the mobile development, you can know that you can scope creep a project indefinitely, to the point where you never bring the product to market. So you've got to have a minimum viable product, what you think your customers need, what you think that your technology needs, what you think that you want to present to the public and give it to them. Once you have that minimum viable product, you can always build from there. But what you're going to notice, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is if you try to go for the full featured product, you'll get it out there and your customers won't like maybe the majority of your features, half your features, 25% of your features. It's really hard to say, because you've kind of developed it in a bubble or a vacuum and you don't have any input from them. So the idea is to go for the MVP, get the minimum viable product ready, and then let the customers give you feedback on what they want to see in version 1.1, 2.0, and on down the road. So this is a good way to get product to market faster and more reliably, and most importantly on timeline and within your budget. So one of the big decisions that you've got to make within a mobile application is whether you're going to build a native web application or a web-based application. A native application is something that will physically run on your iPhone, Android, Windows phone. A web application will look a whole lot like a native application, but it just won't have quite the same feel, and it'll run in Safari on your phone or something like that. If you've ever been down like Silver Dollar City in Branson, they've got a web-based application, and the drawback about that is it's always reliant on your internet connectivity, whereas you move through the park, the connectivity is not very good. It's reliant on your internet connectivity to do everything that it needs to do, so it'll have a tendency to stop and pause and things like that. If it's a field service application where somebody, for instance, might be down inspecting an elevator, for instance, down in an HVAC room or a mechanical room, they won't have the connectivity down there, they won't be able to use the app. The other reason that you might use a web app is just its rapid development. You can develop it once for multiple platforms, but sometimes you'll find that the technology that you want to implement into the app is not really supported well by a web-based application. So, you know, if you get deep into the GPS, deep into the camera, deep into video processing and things like that, you'll find that you won't necessarily have as robust of a platform with a web app as you will a native app. Now, on the other side, a native application, it will go into what you could call an online-offline mode. So if I go down into that same mechanical room, I have no Wi-Fi, I can quickly just pull out my application, continue using it, and then once I step back into wireless coverage, I can zap all that information up to a centralized server or download more information about the job I'm working on, anything along those lines. So there's a definite decision point that you have to make there. Web applications will generally be cheaper. They will generally be faster to build because you only have to make one of them. Native applications will generally be a little bit more expensive and will generally take a little bit longer because the code's a little bit more involved, and more importantly, you have to build multiple of them. I used to flip pizzas at Sbarro's when I was in high school and early college, and one of the lessons that I learned is if you can make a pizza and if you make a pizza and lay it down, I could quickly ask Jen, hey, can you replicate that? And Jen could come in there and replicate it, where if she had to create it from scratch, it might be a little bit more difficult. Mobile apps are that same way. Pick a platform. So let's say iPhone, for instance. Pick your platform, stick with your platform, develop your platform, and then once you've got that mostly fleshed out, use that as that pizza cookie cutter approach and move over to your other platform so that you can use it as a cookie cutter or a template for your other app. There are a lot of similarities between Java, Objective-C, Windows development that you can copy from one to the other and therefore use it. Okay, next thing, partner up. Find a good developer. You know, your buddy that knows mobile, a company down the street from your business that knows what they're doing, you know, find a good partner. And this is really key because they're the ones that are going to take what your ideas are, your concepts are, your money, your time, and they're going to produce something out of that. And what you want produced out of that is obviously something that is functional, is within your timeline, is within your budget, and meets really the end goal of the user. So two things here, innovate with agility. The rule of innovation is fail fast, fail often. And that's what you should do with your mobile app. And using a tool such as a development technique such as Agile will allow you to do that. Agile is all about rapid iteration. So it's all about producing something, turning it over to the customer and users so that they can give you feedback immediately and you can produce something else. So when I say innovate with agility, fail fast, fail often, be agile about it, be quick about it, and quick on the iteration side so that you quickly get your feedback and you can quickly implement it into a better product for your end users. Your prototype group is incredibly important. So they are going to be the people that provide feedback. They're going to be the people that really evaluate your work and everything to date. They're going to be the people that will either make or break your product feedback loop. So you got to pick somebody that's good. Sometimes a potential customer is a good opportunity. Sometimes you can get a user group built up around the application. But just basically you need a group that you can bounce this off of because you're not going to be able to develop it in the vacuum. You need to be able to take it to people and use that feedback loop to get instant and immediate feedback on the pros and cons of the application. So who you select and how you use them is very critical. And last but not least, go to the stores. So, you know, this is really all about taking your final end product and going out to Google Play, the App Store, whatever it may be, and putting it out there. And once again, if you do take it through a single app channel and you build, let's say, iPhone, for instance, and push it out, keep in mind iPhone, the App Store is stringent on requirements. So they have an entire feedback process that can take, we've seen it take anywhere from probably a month down to 3 days. So especially if you get into their peak times around Christmas, it can be a real long turnaround time for what you're trying to accomplish. So always think ahead on the stores. You can get yourself in queue inside of the Apple Store where you can submit a beta. But if you have a tendency to upload binaries on multiple occasions, they have a tendency to push you down in the queue, and they let other people around because it looks like you're not organized. So Google, on the other hand, 24 hours you can drop it into the store, and you can be in just that quick of a time frame. They have some upload checks that they'll do for your applications when you send them up. They're looking for, you know, breaking the rules, breaking standards, using APIs that you shouldn't be using, things along those lines, but they won't really get down and deep into the code. So Apple, on the other hand, is very particular about the user's experience. So for them, it's all about what do we want the user to be able to do, not what do we want the developer to be able to do. So there's a very different line of thinking there between Apple and Android, between how they handle that. So do keep in mind that, you know, your Apple app might sit in the store for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, and you might get rejected because you left a flag on in one of the configuration files that your application doesn't use. So they're going to send it back. They're going to say take the flag out, and you've got to resubmit it. Usually those resubmissions come around pretty quickly, where you can get an approval, you know, pretty quickly after that. But do go to the store. When you do go to the stores, think ahead. Get yourself an account set up. Get a submission up there right away so that you can kind of hold your spot in the queue. Make sure that your submission is not buggy, because you will get rejected if there's a bunch of bugs in it. And make sure that you plan ahead to allow for that lead time and allow for a possible rejection, you know, for something as simple as an oversight in a configuration file or something along those lines. You know, to follow up with that a little bit more, you know, the difference between Apple and Google. Apple is pretty stringent on what they let you do with inside of the applications. So keep an eye out for those types of things. There are some undocumented APIs that will probably get you kicked out. There are some items that are cooked into the operating system that if you try to access those, they will probably get you kicked out rather. And then on the other side, Google letting things in so quickly, there's a tendency, you know, for some malware and things like that to be submitted with applications. So just make sure that, you know, you're looking at your code. You've always had good control of your code. You know your developer. You're not submitting something into the store that could be, you know, something that could be detrimental to your users and in the long run. So plan ahead. Get an account set up, get everything that you need. The submissions are cheap, 99 bucks I think for an Apple, 199 for an enterprise developer. So it's not expensive. Just think about that and plan ahead so that when you are ready to go.
What about Windows?
Windows.
But you went into some detail on Apple and iOS.
Yeah, you know, Windows is so, I'm not going to say immature on their store, but they're nowhere near to the level of Apple and Android. So the stringency is not there. The turnarounds from our experience, the lead times are not there. They don't need to be as long. I think they're still kind of coming of age. You know, there's a lot of apps out there. There's a lot of developers doing it. I think this is their year to shine, though. I really do. You know, there's a lot of untapped markets out there. Their hardware is getting better. You know, they were kind of laughed out with the initial Surfaces, but their Surface 3s really are rock solid. So we primarily develop with Apple and Android. We don't do a lot of Windows Phone development just for those reasons. If a customer comes to us and says, what do you want to build? We usually build Apple and Android, but that doesn't mean that we won't be doing a lot more Windows Phone. On our website, we're primarily a Microsoft shop. We also do a lot of Java development. We also do a lot of PHP development, but when it comes to these two, we primarily do Java and Objective-C. And that's one of the big points about the Microsoft going forward is that the developer pool is already out there. They don't have to learn Objective-C, which, you know, if you knew C++, C, you know, you're right in the same category. But the .NET development pool is one of the largest pools in the world. So it's not going to be hard for people to use the Visual Studio, Visual Studio environment to quickly start building mobile applications. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. You know, if we run through things really quickly here, I'm going to just back out of the presentation just to do a recap. So first and foremost, a lot of ideas never take off. So, you know, people have that moment of inspiration and they never know what to do with it. So in order to get past this section of I don't know how to build applications, wireframing is an easy way to take the first step on this, to lay things out, even before you start talking with developers. Go for that minimum viable product. Don't try to build the world. Build something that is containable and controllable, and you can set yourself up for success. Decide on native versus web and which one will work out better. partner up with a good developer to make sure that you get your work done, your project done. Make sure that you innovate, fail fast, fail often, be agile about the whole thing, rapid iterative development where you can get feedback into the loop immediately. Get your prototype group selected, and think ahead when it comes time to go to the store, because a lot of people will make the assumption that, okay, my app's done, I'm good to go. I've seen apps that have taken months that get rejected and rejected multiple times, or much more than months. So think ahead, get yourself into the queue, get your MVP into the store, and plan ahead. It's a great question. Applications vary wildly by what they need to do. Number of screens, complexity, business rules, graphics that you need created on the design side. There's a big difference in how an application could be built. So, from a budget standpoint, until you would actually get through maybe the wireframing phase and know how many screens and know what the functionality is and things like that, there's really no way to budget it. But that would be step one, to get into a layout and figure out what it is that you're trying to accomplish and then move forward from there. You'll get all kinds of suggestions. Oh, well, your button should be green, or you need 2 more screens that'll do this. So the feedback thing has got a lot to do with the founders, what they're trying to accomplish, what they're trying to go to market with, and taking good feedback from customers. If your feedback group is big enough, we a lot of times will weigh feedback based on how many people are asking for it, something like that. Let's say I got a feedback group of 100, and 50 people are saying, you really need to do this, take that to heart for sure. But if I got a group of 10 and only 1 person is suggesting it, maybe take it back to the group and say, we're thinking about doing something like this, what do you think? And get a little more feedback on the feedback. That's one way to kind of flesh it out a little bit more. And really a matrix, like a feature list, a parking lot, whatever you might want to call it, is very important to make sure that you're documenting all of that, so you can eventually set up a roadmap for version 1.1, 1.2, what's going to come out in the future. So documenting all that, weighting it by the number of people that are voting for it, those types of things will really help you do it. And feedback on the feedback is one that we find to be very successful, because a lot of people go, hey, we need to do this, and boom, the developer's already doing it, and then you come down to release time and nobody uses the feature. So kind of got to weigh it out a little bit more ahead of time. Keep in mind that as soon as I get the application on my device, I can reverse engineer it and I can do anything I want with it. I can produce the code, I can recompile it, I can change one thing, and I could technically come out and brand it as my own application. So with something like HIPAA standards, which we do a lot with on the website, minimum fine's about $250,000 to the company. You really have to think about where the data is going to reside. So that's a case where I would think that a web application, depending on the feature set and what you're looking to accomplish, might be the better solution, where you're using encrypted data through an encrypted pipe back to the server, and you would store your data in a HIPAA compliant data center, things along those lines, and only pull small tidbits of information down to the application, so that whatever's on the application at any point in time isn't something that somebody would really need. And the real important part about HIPAA is it's got to be, just kind of like PCI compliance, it's got to be encrypted at rest, it's got to be encrypted in motion. Well, the key to the patent office is getting there first. So there's about an 18-month black hole in the patent office. So from today, 18 months back, you have no idea what was submitted in patent. And from here until 18 months forward, you're not going to know if you're going to get your patent. So if you look at it as a whole, there's a 3-year window there that you could really kind of get yourself in trouble with. The key is to go in and work with a good patent attorney that would know what seems patentable. Am I going to be able to patent that tabletop? No, but the legs down there, those are something special. They're kind of cool. That's something that you could. So working with a patent attorney, understanding your claims, and well-defined claims. So one of the patents that we helped a client submit had 100 claims on it, and all the claims were incredibly well-defined, so that somebody couldn't come in later and go, well, we built something similar, but it doesn't meet that. We made sure that we helped them define it. So getting into a provisional patent, you've got, I think, a year before you have to turn it into a full patent. Your provisional patent will be a lot less expensive than your full patent. So getting your claims well-defined, getting into a provisional patent that you intend to long-term turn into a full patent is really the only way that you can do it.